For a larger life, today we're going to be looking at how does God, how does belief in God quench our desire for a larger life? What does it mean to desire a larger life? What is a larger life? We're going to be looking at a couple different examples. We're also going to be looking at, let me grab this book here really quick. And keeping with the other couple of videos I've done, we're going to be looking at this book as one of our main sources, Existential Reasons for Belief in God. And we're going to be looking at an article from the Worldview Bulletin by Paul Gold. And we're going to examine, what does that mean? What is a larger life? What does the Word of God have to say about it? And how can we get that larger life, right? Ultimately, that's the desire for a larger life. What is it? How do we get it? Coming up right after this. This is the Vega Pod, inviting you to look at the issues through a biblical lens. As I said earlier, today we're going to be looking at how does belief in God quench our desire for a larger life. So let's go ahead and dive right in. Let me go ahead and share my screen. All right. And let me pull this up here. Cool. God and desiring a larger life. A desire for fullness of life and abundance of good. This need to dance. This is Denise Lovertub of Being. I came that they may have life and have it abundantly. John 10:10. We'll look at this verse again later on. The craving for something different from what we now experience is also a desire for a more expansive life. We want to know more about the hopes and dreams of our acquaintances, the workings of long poems or large engines, the physics of the beginning of the universe, the sociology of subcultures. So these few bullet points here are defining for us what it is, right? What is this desire for a larger life, for fullness of life? It's telling us what the fullness of life is, what it consists of. We want new experiences of fascinating places, grand landscapes, magnificent works of art, beautiful prose, new people. We want to have these experiences because we want to have certain emotions, all for the grand landscapes, magnificent works of art, and beautiful prose, appreciative understanding for the emotional life of our acquaintances, exhilaration at discovering something new about the beginning of the universe or the workings of culture, moral awe at observing goodness. So now we're going to look at a couple verses here that highlight some of these things mentioned in the last bullet point, right? All this discovering things, this moral goodness, right? So this is John 10:10. The thief comes only to steal, kill, and destroy. I came that they may have life and have it abundantly. Ultimately, this larger life, this fullness of life, can only be found in Jesus, through Jesus. It is the glory of God to conceal things, but the glory of kings is to search things out. Proverbs 25, verse 2 in the ESV. Let all the earth fear the Lord. Let all the inhabitants of the world stand in awe of him. Psalm 33, verse 8. There's no greater awe than the awe that we have when we look to God, when we look at God, when we reflect in the person of Jesus Christ. Therefore, let us be grateful for receiving a kingdom that cannot be shaken, and thus let us offer to God acceptable worship with reverence and awe, for our God is a consuming fire. Hebrews 12:28 to 29 ESV. Again, see this word awe. There's no awe like the awe that we experience when we are in relation, when we are in the presence of God. And he said to him, you shall love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your mind. Matthew 22, verse 37 ESV. I want to emphasize here that this soul here is the will and the emotions. So we see how this desire for abundance of life, this desire for a larger life, a desire for a more full life, right? Fullness of life, how the emotions are fulfilled in that love for God, in that love for Jesus. And this next one here is just Luke 10:33 through 34. Um, Let me go ahead and read it really quick. But a Samaritan, as he journeyed, came to where he was, and when he saw him, he had compassion. He went to him and bound up his wounds. pouring on oil and wine. Then he set him on his own animal and brought him to an inn and took care of him. So this one, for those who are not familiar, this is the parable of the Good Samaritan. Here we have what is probably one of the most beautiful examples of moral goodness. We talk about this even if you're not a Christian, even if you're an unbeliever. This is something that gets thrown around, right? Oh, you're a good Samaritan, all that. This is the reference. So we, even those that don't believe, acknowledge that this is a perfect example or the perfect example of moral goodness. And here is, this is when Jesus he asked who was the neighbor, right? This is he's talking to this lawyer in this parable here. He asks him, who is the neighbor? And the lawyer answers, the one who showed him mercy. That's beautiful. This is Galatians 5:22. But the fruit of the Spirit is love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness. All of these things encompass this idea of a larger life, a fullness of life. What Jesus tells us he's giving us, that abundant life. Can't have that life without Jesus. Our desire for these emotions is a desire for a richer life, one that has a wide array of emotions we regard as significant. When this is from the Worldview Bulletin article. When William speaks of the desire for a more expansive life, I think he means that we crave a kind of life that satisfies more than mere surface desires. Second, we might ask, what are those deepest desires of the human heart? We could categorize them into two lists: the longing to have a certain kind of life and the longing to be a certain kind of person. If someone declared that hating and terrorizing were ways in which they pursued what I have called the larger life, we would be properly skeptical. In fact, we would roundly reject the possibility. The reason we would do so is that we include moral ideas in the idea of a richer, fuller life. This is from the book, The Existential Reasons for Belief in God. It's a good contrast, right? Because one of the arguments, and in the article in the Existential Reasons site, I believe, he goes back and forth between different objections. So he addresses them, but I would encourage you to definitely go back and look through them, and think through what he's saying, think through the objections, and think through the responses. We were created, as J.P. Moreland describes in his book, The Kingdom Triangle, to live a dramatic or great life. God created us to have this abundant life, right? He created us to have this larger life, this fullness of life. And he gives us the means. And the means is through Jesus. We want to be weighty, a glorious person. We want to be multidimensional, an emotionally fulfilled person. That is the kind of expansive life we crave. This longing is built into the fabric of created reality itself. Humans were created for God. Humans were created as bearers of the divine image to live a certain kind of expansive life and to be a certain kind of expansive person. Indeed, to become like God. We are created by God, not just to survive, but to thrive. All right. That's all I have for you guys today. I have, I think, one more on going through some of these existential reasons for belief in God. And until then, I'll catch you guys next time.